What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Taurean Reloaded channel. If you are new, please be sure to go ahead and hit that subscribe button and click that bell to have your notifications set to all so you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video or go live. Also, be sure to like, comment, and share this content on your various social media platforms. So you see this headline right here that's coming from the Texas Tribune. And somehow I'm not surprised by the headline or what state it's coming out of. Texas, aka NRA's favorite state, in my honest opinion. So it's a state education board members push back on proposal to use quote-unquote involuntary relocation to describe slavery. You heard that correctly. The Texas school board is, or the school board is in general, is trying to call slavery, or refer to slavery as involuntary relocation. Now, the reason why this doesn't surprise me, and when I first saw this, it reminded me of the McGraw Hill book situation a few years ago. If y'all remember, McGraw Hill was going to try to release some new history books that was going to rewrite how slavery actually came to be, or how it was depicted, or change its depiction and what actually happened. They really were trying to rewrite history. And a lot of people, especially a lot of black people, and rightfully so, pushed back against it, and they completely scrapped the whole idea. Like, they had to hurry up and get that thing out the way, because I believe they were trying to do it over the summer so they could have the books ready for the fall. But people got that out the way, and they just left it alone after that. Well, now it looks like they're trying to pull a U-turn with this new method, and they're trying to push this idea right here. Involuntary relocation, that makes no sense. Again, this is PC, Dub S, trying to rewrite history as they see fit. Mainly the history of the part that shows them as the villain. Notice every time it shows them as the villain or the monster, they're always trying to rewrite history. Especially when it comes to us. Why do you think they got so mad with the whole CRT thing? Remember the video I did about the black lady who relocated from Maryland down to Georgia, and they ran her out of not one but two towns because allegedly she was about to teach CRT, or have CRT be a part of the curriculum when she wasn't? But they'll be fine with this, though. It's amazing how that works, right? They are pissed with quote-unquote CRT being taught in schools, which, plot twist and spoiler alert, it's not taught on a public school level. But I'm sure they would be completely okay with calling slavery involuntary relocation. Let's go ahead and get into this article. A group of Texas educators have proposed the Texas State Board of Education that slavery should be taught as involuntary relocation during second grade social studies instruction, but board members have asked them to reconsider the phrasing, according to the state board's chair. The board, with unanimous consent, directed the work group to revisit that specific language, Kevin Ellis, chair of the Texas State Board of Education, said in a statement issued late Thursday. The working group of 9 educators, including a professor at the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, is one of many such groups advising the state education board to make curriculum changes. This summer, the board will consider updates to social studies instruction a year after lawmakers passed a law to keep topics that make students feel discomfort, aka PC students, out of Texas classrooms. The board will have a final vote on the curriculum in November. The suggested change surfaced late during its June 15th meeting that lasted more than 12 hours. Board member Aisha Davis, a Democrat who represents the Dallas and Fort Worth, brought up concerns to the board, saying that the wording is not a fair representation of the slave trade. The board, upon reading the language in the suggested curriculum, sent the working draft back for revision. For K through 2, carefully examine the language used to describe events, specifically the term involuntary relocation, the state board wrote in its guidance to the work group. I can't say what their intention was, but that's not going to be acceptable, Davis told the Texas Tribune on Thursday. In 2015, Texas attracted attention when it's discovered a social studies textbook approved for use in the state called African Slaves Who Were Brought to the United States Workers. In this case, the The group proposing the second grade curriculum revisions was given a copy of Senate Bill 3, Texas law, that dictates how slavery and issues of race are taught in Texas. Now keep in mind, Texas and its relationship with Juneteenth. And keep in mind, when they put this proposal out in June, in which the month of Juneteenth happens in 4 days before Juneteenth, because they said June 15th. I don't think that's a coincidence. The law states that slavery can't be taught as part of the true founding of the United States, and that slavery was nothing more than a deviation from the American values. Let me read that again. The law states that slavery can't be taught as part of the true founding. Those are some key words right there, true founding. They're basically telling you what we already knew, who the true founders of America was in the true building of what America is. But see, they said true founding. They literally, like I said, want to rewrite history as if slavery was just this minuscule thing and it contributed little to nothing to how America or the United States was actually founded. And it says deviation, and it says, and that slavery was nothing more than a deviation from American values. Well, if you didn't want that to be, then maybe you shouldn't have gone and got, I don't know, people to become slaves to build up your infrastructure. How about that? But we know that wasn't going to happen, and it's already been set in stone as far as history goes. But they want to rewrite history yet again to stroke their own ego. Remember, early in the article, it says they don't want to make certain children feel discomfort. And by certain children, they're talking about PC children. We don't have to ask which kids as far as ethnicity goes. We know who they're talking about. But really also, it's also not to make them feel uncomfortable, but it's also to not make, say, PC teachers, other PC staff, PC parents, and so on and so forth. It kind of reminds me of what Ron DeSnowflake down in Florida continues to do. And they're doing the same thing in Texas. And little sidebar, isn't it interesting how a lot of red states are very low on the totem pole when it comes to education? There's a reason for that. A lot of it is because of curriculums like this. But let me continue. They were given Senate Bill 3, so that had to have influenced their mind, with that being a document given to them right before they had to perform this review, Davis said. Ellis's statement pointed out that slavery is currently not included in social studies instruction to second graders. The topic of slavery is not currently addressed in the second grade curriculum. This work is meant to address that deficiency, he said. Stephanie Alvarez, a professor at the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley and a member of the group, said she did not attend the group meetings when the language was crafted because of personal issues, but that the language was extremely disturbing. She would not comment any further because of her role in the work group. Part of the proposed social studies curriculum standards outline that students should compare journeys to America, including voluntary Irish immigration and involuntary relocation of African people during colonial times. Basically anything, like I said, to make them look good, because they feel their image has been tarnished. And in order to try to save their image, they have to tell a bunch of lies to any and everyone that they feel will believe them. And why not start with the kids? Because, we can get them while they're young. You can't get the adults because they're already set in their ways. Annette Gordon-Reed, a history professor at Harvard University, said using involuntary relocation to describe slavery threatens to blur out what actually occurred during that time in history. There is no reason to use the proposed language, she said. Young kids can grasp the concept of slavery and being kidnapped into it, Gordon-Reed said. The African slave trade is unlike anything that had or has happened, the numbers and distance. If language like what the group of Texas educators propose is accepted and taught to children, it means the country is moving in the wrong direction. Honestly, the establishment has not been moving really much of anywhere, if you want to be technical. Tell children the truth. They can handle it, she said. It's not the kids. It's not the children that they're worried about. It's them. They don't want to be seen in the bad light. They could give a damn about the kids, because if they cared, they wouldn't be teaching them lies. Texas is in the process of developing a new curriculum for social studies, a process that happens about every decade to update what children should be learning in Texas' 8,866 public schools. So they're telling you right there, every decade they changing something. And this is the decade when they decide to change something, and how ironic this is what they're trying to change. I wouldn't be surprised if every decade they try to change something on this particular subject alone, but they sprinkle everything, a little of something else or some things else to cover it. This process comes as the state's public education system has become heavily politicized, from lawmakers passing legislation on how race. Sorry about that, I had an interruption, but let me go read it again. This process comes as the state's public education system has become heavily politicized, from lawmakers passing legislation on how race and slavery should be taught in schools to conservative political action committees pouring large amounts of money to put more conservatives on school boards who promise to get rid of curriculum and programs they consider divisive and make white children feel bad. What did I tell you? They just said the quiet part out loud. Now, interesting, in the article earlier in the article when I was reading it, when they was talking about it was going to make certain children uncomfortable, and I immediately said PC children. Now it gets down further in the article, and what does it say? Divisive and making white children feel bad. There it is. It's so predictable. Listen, when you listen to the voices of the new black media on a consistent basis, even as myself as a contributor, I still listen. It's so easy to point out the nuances and what people are going to say before they even say it. They didn't even have to put that part in the article for me to know who this was targeting. They do not want certain children to feel a type of way, but how would you even know that? Like I said, it's not for the children. It's for the adults. But they're using the children as a shield for their, I guess you can say, their ultimate plan. Governor Greg Abbott, aka Governor Wills, and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, who would throw his own family under the bus for financial gain, have made parental rights a priority as they both seek re-election in November. Patrick has also vowed to push for a Don't Say Gay bill in Texas, which is the same thing that Ron DeSnowflake is pushing or has pushed down in Florida, mirroring Florida's conservative push to limit classroom discussions about the people in the academy. Last year's SB 3 doesn't mention critical race theory by name, but the bill was designed to keep the teaching out of secondary schools, even though it is not taught in K through 12 Texas public schools, or K through 12 public schools anywhere, to be honest. Critical race theory is a university level field of study based on the idea that racism is embedded in legal systems and not limited to individuals. It has become a common phrase used by conservatives to include anything about race taught or discussed in public and secondary schools, which is, when I read that, it doesn't surprise me that Texas is trying to push this, because they'll feel that lines right up with quote unquote CRT. They'll feel that, oh, they're trying to sneak CRT in there by talking about slavery. Oh no, we got to change the talk of slavery and call it involuntary relocation. They are that threatened by the role they played in their past. Well, their ancestors anyway. They are shook. The work group that proposed the language change in referring to slavery is one of several groups presenting their drafts to the State Education Board, which has the final say on whether to accept or reject them. Some drafts of new curriculum standards are published on the agency's website, but this was not, Davis said. I don't like it because it's a personal belief. I don't like it because it's not rooted in truth, she said. We can all have discussions we can have all the discussions we want, but we have to adopt the truth for our students. And that's the entire article right there. This is exactly why a lot of black parents are opting to want to homeschool their children. This is exactly why. Because they're not teaching the kids the absolute truth about what actually happened when it came to the founding of America. They want to, again, rewrite history. And quite honestly, they've been doing it for so long because the history is literally in their hands to rewrite. But it's a lot of pushback. And see, here's the thing. We live in a time where it is very difficult for them to do that. without the pushback. At one point, pushing back against them doing something like this was unheard of. It was hard to do. But now it's so much more easier. And my thing is this, and I've said it before, we live in the information age. We live in the age of the internet and even social media. Well, social media is a huge part of the internet sector. What makes them think that whatever they teach them in these schools, they won't find outside of the school? That's what I'm saying. Because I'm going to be honest, a lot of the stuff that I've learned with my own history, I did not learn in school. And I think it's safe to say that a lot of the people that watch my videos can say the same exact thing, no matter what the age is. I learned a lot from the new black media or other people who could be better suited to teach our history the right way. All they're doing is pushing the kids into the direction that they should be pushed into. But it doesn't surprise me that the state of Texas is doing this. And look at who the governor is. And the lieutenant governor, for that matter. Both of them are trash. But keep that in mind, though, that education rates are very low in a lot of red states. And then when you look into why that is, stuff like this and a whole bunch more pops up. It's because they're not teaching the right history. Granted, across the board, the public school system isn't teaching the right history anyway. But it's something about these particular states that it's a consistency there. It's a repetition there. It's a pattern of what they choose to and what not to teach. Now, notice they didn't mention about, say, the Holocaust or, say, D-Day or World War I and II. God forbid they want to teach about why the Civil War actually happened, the actual truth about that, and a host of other things. But when it comes to slavery, that's when they're like, pump your brakes. They do it every single time. They never go off script. This is them being on code. This is them being on code. I need to know from my followers, my subscribers down in Texas, what is your take on this? Like, what else have you heard about this? Or did you even know this existed? Because sometimes I can bring stories to y'all and from your state or any state for that matter, and many of you would not be aware of it until I bring it to your attention. I just would like to know, what is this and what is your next step or course of action when it comes to this? I'm sure they're going to push back hard as they can against this, because even though we can have the simple solution of just homeschool our kids, just homeschool our children, that's a simple solution. But the long game is them referring to slavery as this. And what will happen is this. Imagine if this sticks, or if this actually hit and stuck and clinged on for 10 years. That's a whole generation right there. That this got embedded into kids' head, in children's heads, because guess what? Not every black parent is going to homeschool their child. And the ones who's intended for, which is PC children, and they said it themselves, they're going to latch on to this. And then what's going to happen 10 years from now? This will no longer have its meaning. This will be the new definition. And who knows what that definition will be, because I don't think they mentioned it in the article how they're going to define this. They just have a name for it. They haven't defined it yet. So I can only imagine what the definition of involuntary relocation is going to be. And that's my take on it.